Okay, Roma, good evening. Welcome to ICK and to the upcoming this chapter of the Startup Grind Prishtina. We do the Startup Grind editions in partnership with Google for Startups since 2014. I think now moved to the Microsoft for Startups, but we need to check it out. It is my great honor to receive today a special guest, two special guests in fact. My childhood friend, Eldita Tarani. I need to emphasize she's from Jakova. And Jennifer Brennan is a user experience research manager at Google since 2016. She has helped design some of the most interesting features of the Pixel smartphone, researching new technologies and innovations, connecting her science background with high tech. She helps teams and designers and engineers to design experiences that are user-friendly, inclusive, and innovative while managing teams and of new researchers. Jennifer holds a master's in experimental psychology from San Jose State University. I've never heard about this degree. Where she was fascinated with research in cognition and perception. So it's quite deep tech. We have also a really special guest today. Visa from the Arizona State University. She was our previous guest speaker at Startup Grind Prishtina. So please, during the networking sessions, please connect with them and our lovely guests. I'm going to hand over the mic to Eldita now. She'll take over. Eldita, you're in your home, so feel free. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ben. Shall we stand, sit? Maybe let's maybe stand. Yeah, what a special pleasure for me to be back here at ICK. It's very simple to say that my journey with STEM and tech has just crossed paths with this place. Actually, some of the most formative years of my interest and practice of STEM and technology have been during my time when I was collaborating with ICK with a few different programs and projects. One of the most proud ones that we mention always, Junior Geeks. I'm sure some of you have heard about it. And today I'm back here as a user experience researcher, bringing a special guest with me, my dear colleague, friend, ex-graduate colleague as well, Jennifer Brennan, to talk a little bit more about the field of UX research, which is a really fascinating field for us. I hope you will find the same impression once you have heard more about it. Maybe some of you even have gotten to practice it. Unfortunately, in Kosovo, it's not very, I wouldn't say developed, but it's not very common to practice UX research, but I do talk to people who are like wanting to expand conversations on this topic. So maybe this is a good start for us to just disclose a little bit what UX research is about, how does it help inform design, how do we do that at Google, and why is it important at the end of the day. And I think Jennifer would be a great person to talk on that, since she's been working for more than 7 years at Google now at the hardware UX research team on different projects, and especially on some important Pixel projects. So without further ado, I'm just going to pass the mic, or she has a mic already, but pass the conversation to Jennifer, and I will be sitting here close and just kind of collaborating as you go. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for having me. My name is Jennifer, and this is my dear friend Eldita, who invited us here. So thank you so much to Innovation Center Kosovo for inviting us as part of Startup Grind Week. Yes, we work at this small, tiny, barely heard of startup in Silicon Valley. We're thinking of calling ourselves Google. I don't know if it'll stick though. But we are very excited to be here to talk about UX research and how we use it to innovate product design. And so just a little bit of an overview of what we're going to cover. We're going to do an intro to UX, talk a little bit about our journey and how we ended up in this field, how as UX researchers we have the opportunity to collaborate across so many different disciplines, and then talk about how we use the stages of research at all the different stages of product development, give some of the project examples from some features that have already launched in market, and talk about how we got there. And then Eldita will do a little special mention for accessibility and inclusive design. All right, so does anyone here already work or study UX? Yeah, all right, couple people. Awesome. And so UX stands for user experience. And so it is a design that focuses on the end user and the experience that they'll have with your product, your feature, your service. And it really aims to provide the positive experience that will keep users coming back to your product or stay within your company. And it has kind of three main benefits that we like to talk about. One is money. It increases people's willingness to want to pay for your product and service if they're having a good experience with it. It will increase your user or customer loyalty and decrease the likelihood that one of your users might go to a competitor or a different company, a different product. And it also increases your likelihood of user satisfaction and their willingness to recommend your product or service to someone else. And within kind of this field of UX, there's different disciplines. There's UX research, there's UX design, and UX engineering. Today we're mostly going to talk about UX research because that's our experience, but we'll also talk about how we work with design and engineering as well. All right, so what is UX research? I was trying to find some good definitions. I found a couple that I liked. So I like to think of my role as a UX researcher is to uncover user behaviors, their needs, motivations, to help make products, services, websites more intuitive and more enjoyable for users. And we do this using a variety of qualitative and quantitative research methods, and then we take these insights that we learn from research and we share them back with designers and engineers. And we're lucky to work at Google, who has this wonderful motto. We hear it kind of over and over again. It's very ingrained within the company to focus on the user and all else will follow. And I'll talk a little bit about sort of how we came into this field. And so both Eldita and I did our bachelor's degree in psychology, Eldita at the University of Prishtina here in Kosovo, and I myself am from Massachusetts in the United States. And we both majored in psychology, I think having more of an interest in more of clinical kind of therapy, like helping people, and kind of like a mental health. And then having worked in those fields for a while, we kind of felt this longing to have more research background and kind of help on more of a research side. And so that is how we met at San Jose State University. San Jose is kind of the lesser known Silicon Valley, like south of San Francisco area. And we both pursued master's degrees in experimental and research psychology. And that is where we got introduced to the field of UX, because that area is so ingrained with tech, culture. We sort of started to learn more about UX and realize, like, oh, this is a way that we could apply psychology, where we get to talk to people and learn from people and use all these great research methods, and then apply it to really innovative product strategies and designs that when we can see implemented immediately. And we both became very attracted to the field and started working in it. So I originally worked at a much smaller, maybe unknown cybersecurity company called Trend Micro. And this was almost a great lesson for me for what happens when your company does not prioritize UX. And so I worked as part of a small UX team at that company, and after about 6 months, they decided to lay off the entire UX department, saying, we don't need you anymore, we're just gonna do our engineering, we're just gonna build things. And I don't know if any of you've heard of Trend Micro, probably not, because they're not a very successful company. So after that, we decided, I started working for Google, and I have been there ever since. I've been there for 7 years. And so so that is a little bit about our background and how we ended up there, but I've met dozens and dozens of UXers at Google in my years, and I've kind of heard all about people's different backgrounds, different ways of getting into this field. And so I've met everyone who has different backgrounds in anthropology, sociology, industrial design, software engineering, human factors. And so a lot of different disciplines kind of can lend themselves to working in UX. And so, yeah, we work on the hardware UX team. So our team does everything with Pixel phones, smartwatches, earbuds, tablets. We also do the home Nest products, so all of the speakers, cameras, doorbells, anything kind of in those disciplines. And so having been in this field for a while, I like to talk about why I like it, why I keep working in this field, what makes me inspired to do it. And so I have always felt this sort of compulsion to want to help people, to want to help my community, to make the world a better place and to give back. And so I really knew when I wanted to pick a job that I wanted to be able to feel this. And so I love being able to be the voice of the user. I love being able to help make products that are beautiful and simple, that are useful to people, that help people connect and express themselves. I know when I moved to California, like being able to use my technology, my phones, my tablets, my cameras, in order to better connect with my family, and just wanting that to be a very good experience. All right, and as I said, it's very multidisciplinary. Nope, that word's not coming out right. Okay, there we go. So Don Norman is kind of a very iconic person in this field. He's especially in UX design, has set a lot of the principles for UX, and he talked about that in order to achieve high quality user experience in your company, there must be this seamless merging between disciplines, including engineering, marketing, graphic design, industrial design. And it's great to be in this field and getting to work with all of these different disciplines. And so here's kind of like this orbit of all the people that work around us. And so as UX researchers, we really bridge a lot of the gaps between hardware, software, industrial design. Because we work on these consumer-facing products, a lot of material scientists, color scientists we get to work with as well. People who work on the platform team of Android, feature-specific people like camera experts. And because we ship things to people's houses, even the people who spend a lot of time making pretty packaging for people, lots of thought and research actually goes into that as well. Strategy people, marketing people. And so because we work at such a huge company, so our UX research team is about 25 to 40 people, and each of these little bubbles on the screen represent other teams of about 25 to 40 people. And so we really work with a ton of people, and it's really one of the great skills that you develop in UX is your ability to collaborate, to work with others, and even though you all come from different expertise and different backgrounds, you all have this shared goal of trying to make the best, coolest thing possible. All right, and so we'll talk a little bit about, at least what I've seen at Google, of how we develop hardware products, and there's kind of a lot of different stages that go into that and how we inform and conduct research at each of these different stages. All right, so usually it starts with a cool idea. And at Google, it is a very grassroots, bottom-up type company where sometimes we're given a lot of freedom to just come up with, I don't know how to make it stop doing that, so. Where someone will just come up with a cool idea for something, and then they'll come back and be like, let's see if we can make it work, and let's see if people might actually want to use this. And so from there, it goes into these, what we call engineering validation trials, where they're like, well, this is a cool idea. Let's see if we can actually make it work. Is it feasible to build it? And at the same time, maybe designers hear the idea and are like, oh, that is cool. How would that look? What would that look like? And they'll start sketching and wireframing and kind of coming up with different ideas for how that could look. If they can get it to work, if they can get it to look cool, then it might go into this prototyping phase. And the prototyping phase can go, very, very repeated rounds of kind of consistently improving upon this idea. And once we get the prototypes in its kind of final perfected form, then it will be something that you would actually see in the market as a final product. And so some of these things can go fast, maybe a year, and then maybe one of the examples I'll show you later has taken about 7 years to complete this whole cycle. And I've only worked there 7 years, so I'm imagining really cool things might take even longer than 7 years.
There is one product that you'll talk about later that you have kind of started working 5 years ago and it's now out.
Yes. Surprise. Awesome. And so within this product development cycle, we have different stages to our research. When we come up with these new cool ideas, sometimes it's engineers, sometimes it's designers who come up with cool thoughts and they start socializing it with their teams and kind of trying to gain interest in it. Other times those new ideas do come from research, and we will do research with groups of people or individuals and look at existing technology and see where there are gaps, what's not working so well, what could be better. And we call this phase of research kind of foundational knowledge or exploratory research. I think Eldita has a little bit of an example that she can
Yeah.
share.
Sometimes, for example, one thing that I think Google takes great pride of is inclusive design, so building designs that are inclusive for everyone to enjoy and also that are accessible, that even people with different abilities are able to enjoy those. So in that sense, sometimes Google will identify a group of marginalized group of people that, for example, have different needs and make that as a cause of reason. So decide to, let's say like low vision or blind people decide to understand a little bit more what are the needs of that group and how existing products or new initiative products can be built to better help that group of people either navigate or manage or whatever the user needs are. And for example, I was a part of this big research that helped blind and low vision people navigate their surroundings. So we were.
Yeah, and so we were looking into what these different use cases are, what the different use needs are, and what kind of products can be built by working together one-on-one with people that come from this group, like low vision and blind people. So this is one example.
Awesome. And then once the new idea sort of takes root, it goes into, as I mentioned, these engineering validation or design mocking stages. And this stage of research we call concept testing. And so this is when designers might give us sketches, wireframes, very, very rough early prototypes, and we'll say, let's take these to some users, test groups, get feedback, see what people think, see if it's something that's useful to people, if it's intuitive, what are people's maybe early concerns about the technology, what's confusing, and so it's still very early on in the process. And so we call this concept testing. After concept testing, and I guess all along the way, we're kind of working very closely in partnership with design and engineering. So we will go run some studies, we'll come back and we'll say these are the insights that we've heard, these are kind of common themes that kept coming up as we shared these ideas with small trusted groups of people that we recruited. And we'll go back to the design engineer teams and be like, these were the concerns, can they be mitigated? These are things people really liked about your idea, can we kind of focus on highlighting those? And then kind of as the product becomes more of a concrete, then it goes into the prototyping stage. And this is where we do iterative or like repeat continuous rounds of design and usability testing. Usability testing just meaning, is it usable? Is it intuitive? Do people look at it and automatically kind of know what to do without a lot of instructions? And so in these stages, we will recruit very small groups, maybe 6 to 10 people. We'll bring them in, we'll show them our very early prototypes, have them use them. Maybe we'll give them little assignments like, oh, can you try to do this task? Or here's this new idea, what would you do with it? And they'll be quick, 6 to 10 people, and we do this intentionally. Well, Don Norman said that you can usually find everything that's wrong with your idea by talking about 6 to 10 people. And we'll take these insights, we'll go back to the design team and be like, you know, this wasn't that intuitive, can you fix it? Or this design didn't really like catch people's eye, can we fix it? And they'll do small little incremental changes. They'll give us a new version of the prototype, we take it back, recruit another 6 to 10 people, and this process will go like on and on and on, you know, every like few weeks, several rounds of it until it's in a place that we consider, all right, now it's almost perfect.
And oftentimes we'll also test for
Accessibility, so just making sure that even though the design looks pretty, it's pleasing, it's useful, and has all the features that we intend to have, does it work well with accessibility features of the phone, for example?
Yes. And then once we have a product that we feel like is in its final perfect stages, maybe that's to say that about 80 to 90% of people can use it very intuitively, then it might be ready for product launch. And so a product will launch in the market, you know, we'll release our new Pixel phone with its new camera feature or its new audio features or whatever it might be. It'll go to market, and this is a very exciting moment for us because it's when we usually get to finally tell our friends and family, like, this is the thing I've been working on for like 1 to 5 years, and now I can finally show it to you. And we get really excited to get feedback. It's what we call post-launch CSAT, or customer satisfaction research. So we love hearing things from tech bloggers. Believe it or not, every Amazon review, every Reddit post, actually we do look at those. We love seeing customer feedback. We'll do a lot of customer feedback surveys to see what really resonated with people and what didn't. And this will also inform kind of our strategy for the next generation of product. And so this is sort of the life cycle of our job and different stages that we do research at. And so I guess how does that look in an actual day-to-day or month-to-month? And so usually we're pretty busy. We're juggling a few things at a few different times. So we might be running kind of these early stage, foundational exploratory research phases. As we're wrapping that up, we're sort of planning the next stage of concept testing as we're working on another feature that's kind of going through those iterative rounds. We might be supporting new initiatives cross-functionally, like sustainability, something like that. Participating in research workshops, all the while we're always trying to build and strengthen all those connections on that stakeholder web. So it's a very fast-paced environment. There's a lot going on. It's definitely for people who like kind of a fast pace, who like having a couple of things going on at the same time. And then I'll just share a little bit about our different stages of how we run a research study. And so it very much follows the traditional scientific method that you learn in school, where first you kind of make your research plan, you make sure it's sound, you make sure you control for confounding variables, you kind of identify your variables that you're trying to test, then you'll go and collect the data, you'll recruit participants, you'll talk to them, you collect your data, you come back, you analyze it, you create a report, and then you go back to the teams and you share all these results. All right, awesome. And so another thing that I really like about working in UX, as opposed to, I've also worked in academia and I've worked in other settings as well, is the different variety of stuff we get to work on. And so especially within hardware design, we get to touch on a lot of different topic areas. So as we kind of already mentioned, these more generative, experimental, foundational projects, because we work on consumer-facing hardware that we want to look nice if it's gonna go in your home, if you're gonna be carrying it in your hand. We want it to look nice, so we do a lot of design research. Something I never thought about before I started working in this field is how there's all this sort of competing interests between having really long battery life, between having really fast CPU processing, which then creates a lot of thermal, a lot of heat that's given off. And so how to balance making sure your products are actually comfortable if they're getting too hot, but you also want them to be really fast, so that has become a whole line of research as well. Human factors is a term I also had never heard until we got into this field. It is basically the study of ergonomics. And so actually, every time you touch a button on your screen, it has been specifically designed for your average thumb length to mostly be able to comfortably reach it. It has been made so that you can really handle your devices in a very comfortable way. Other different interactions. Because we work on home products, we also study design architecture, indoor living, design trends of people's indoor, in their home environments. We love working on sustainability across all of our different products, and inclusive design is across everything we do. Right, and this is just kind of a very comprehensive list of different types of research methods that we get to employ. So I think another thing that has kept me working in this job for 7 years is that you do get to do so many different projects, you get to try so many different research methods to kind of get at what are the best insights. And so maybe I won't read all of these, but just as kind of a general overall. All right, so let's talk about some cool products. All right, so I want to highlight this as an example, mostly because it's something that I very first started working on when I worked at Google, and it just launched last month, so I'm so excited to get to talk about it. So the Google Pixel Fold is Google's first ever foldable phone. It transforms from a small phone into a small tablet. Let me see if I can make this video play. Let's see. Oh, can I draw that again? Oh, okay. There'll be another video at the end. And so as I talk about this, I'll kind of walk through those different stages of the research and product development that I talked about. So the first one is that foundational, is that exploratory phase where always we're trying to innovate and come up with new ideas, come up with something people haven't seen or used yet. And so, about 6 years ago, something like that, we kind of had this thought of, what if we changed the way that phones look? What if we added more screens? What if they went from a phone to a tablet? What if it was put in your pocket? How would that even work? And so we started to do what we call co-design sessions, where we would invite groups of people, we would invite them into our research session, we'd give them all sorts of art supplies, and we'd give them this prompt and say, design us something that has 3 screens that has at least one fold. What would that look like? We really wanted to see how people intuitively would think of this new design. And so, it doesn't really show up here. And so we saw people kind of making more like clamshell type things. We saw people making things where the 2 screens were on the outside and would open like this. We saw people creating things that looked like books. And so we saw all of these different ideas, and then we kind of walked through what would be the pros and cons or the challenges of each of these different types of designs. And that is how we kind of like take those early ideas from these different sessions, we take them back, and as a big cross-functional team of designers, engineers, product managers, we sit down and we have these great design sprint workshops where we kind of figure out, all right, well, if we had both screens on the outside, let's say, then if you fold it, put it in your pocket, that might not be the best. Or if we had clamshells, is that too reminiscent of very old, more like flip phones of the past? And so kind of thinking through different challenges, we're like, all right, it would seem like the best course of action is to put 2 screens in the middle, fold it inward like a book. And books are very intuitive to people. Like you open it, you get more knowledge on the inside. And so that's kind of how these ideas were born. And then, so we started to create, these are not our prototypes, these are just some stock images I took off Google, because I still unfortunately can't share those really like cool looking early prototypes we had. But we'd bring things back to users that were kind of rough, and then we'd show them to people and get their feedback, and just watch people think about, how would I use this? What would I use this for? What concerns would I have? And a lot of the concerns we heard early on was, oh, that sounds so like it's going to be this big, thick, heavy thing in my pocket. And so we knew early on, like, oh, if we can't make this thin, we better not make it at all. If we can't make this lightweight, we better not make it at all. We heard a lot of concerns about battery life, if it's going to have 3 screens and it's not going to last me the whole day, I'm not going to use it. So I'm like, all right, if we can't make the battery life last all day, no one's going to use this product. And so early things like that go into our mind that informed our design, that we knew it had to be thin, we knew it had to have extended battery life, and kind of different things like that. And so we kept iterating on our designs, kind of kept pushing engineering challenges for them to figure out new ways of making this work. We kept pushing our designers for figuring out how to make this look sleek, how to make this look cool. And that was kind of those iterative rounds that we kept working on and working on and working on. And finally, 7 years later, here we are. All right, let me see. I won't play this whole thing, but let's see.
It combines Tensor G2, Android innovation, and AI for an incredible phone.
It is a YouTube video. Let's see. What happened to it? I think it's the HDMI cord. If I like unplug it for a second. It's okay. Sorry. Hold on. Let me see. Okay. I'll go back to this.
Introducing Google Pixel Fold. It combines Tensor G2, Android innovation, and AI for an incredible phone that unfolds into an incredible compact tablet with a familiar front display that works great when it's folded, and when it's unfolded, it's our thinnest phone yet, and the thinnest foldable on the market. We had to pack a flagship level phone into nearly half the thickness, which meant completely redesigning components like the telephoto lens and the battery and a lot more. But Pixel Fold has 3 times the screen space of a normal phone. You unfold it, and you're treated to an expansive 7.6-inch display that opens flat with a custom 180-degree fluid friction hinge. We've extensively tested the hinge to be the most durable of any foldable. Pixel Fold gives you entirely new ways to take stunning photos and videos with Pixel Camera. Dual screen interpreter mode. Your Pixel Fold can use both displays. Both displays. To provide a live translation to you and the person you're talking to. So it's really easy to connect across languages. Powering all of this is Google Tensor G2. And the entire foldable experience is built.
What I wanted to highlight from that video, so a lot of what we hear from customers that they're very excited about or their biggest concerns often finds their ways into these marketing promotion materials. And so like I said, one of the biggest concerns was, is it going to be thin enough? I really don't want to carry around this big thick phone in my pocket. So you notice he kept saying, thinnest phone, thinnest phone. He'll kind of make that resonate. And other things when we showed people these early concepts, like what would be exciting to you? What would be cool if we could use this? And we heard a lot of people say, if you can use the 2 screens separately, I could do one thing on one side and one thing on the other, I could have dual screen mode, that would be so exciting to me. So then the marketing material comes out and we're really highlighting, look, dual screen mode. And so a lot of our research that we hear from customers then finds its way into marketing as well. And like I said, we just launched, so now we're in that sort of post-launch customer satisfaction phase of doing research and just kind of seeing what our tech blogs say about us, what our YouTube reviewers say about us, and launching all sorts of customer satisfaction type surveys to get more data on that as well. All right, how are we doing on time? I have more examples, but maybe we have time. All right. Another example that I can highlight, just around the idea of innovation, of new design, thinking of new different ways that we could use technology. So I worked on this project. It was part of our Pixel 4 called Motion Sense. And it was this idea of, can I use my phone without touching it? Is there a different way that I could give inputs to my phone without actually having to touch it? And so this idea was born using this sort of sonar chip, I believe, in which you could interact with your phone without touching it. So I'll just kind of like give you for context what that looks like.
With Motion Sense, it senses when you're close, unlocks, and skips without you even having to touch it. Switch to the new Google Pixel 4, a phone made the Google way.
Great. And so when we had this idea early on, we would bring people into the lab, we would put phones kind of on a pedestal, and we would be like, let's say you want to interact with this phone without using it. Let's say you wanted to change music. Let's say you wanted to send something. Let's say you wanted to open something. What would you do? And so we kind of saw people being like, I guess I would kind of like wave at it. I guess I'd kind of, and we'd watch people make gestures over and over again, and we'd kind of see what commonly people kept doing that was naturally intuitive to them. And then when we figured out these set of gestural use cases, we called them, we went back to the engineering team, we went back to the design team and said, is this possible? People want to wave at their phone, so can you detect these specific ranges of motion and capture them and use that as input for the screen? And so this was a really fun project because not only did we get to kind of figure out how people would mentally think about it, their mental models, but asking people to change their behavior is really hard. So we get used to doing things a certain way, and so if you're going to ask people to change their behavior, trying to come up with something that is super intuitive is probably the best way to do that. So this was a really cool project. It launched in one of our phones, and then I think other priorities kind of became competing for that space around the camera, and it was not so much continued, but it was a cool idea at the time. All right, and now Eldita can talk a little bit about her awesome projects for accessibility and inclusion.
Maybe just really briefly. So I found that one of the biggest pleasantries working for Google was that Google does really pay attention to inclusive designs. So kind of want to make sure that the product is going to be used by and accessible for different groups of people in different parts of the world, coming from different cultures with different abilities. So just kind of like apply globally. And that's important to me because in my career, I always worked with projects and organizations and studies that looked at like how can we bridge the gaps that exist between different people. So I kind of found myself, really relating to this mission. And I was lucky enough to work on some interesting projects, like the one project that I mentioned before is the result is called the guided frame. Jenna, do you mind playing that video? Yeah, the guided frame is a feature that was born to help people that have low vision or that is not corrected by glasses or that are blind to take selfies. The idea was that everyone should be able to take a picture of themselves, knowing whether they're inside the frame, knowing how they look, having a certain amount of feedback. Therefore, guided frame was born. And there was some processes associated, some, as Jenna described, phases of research that sort of produced this end result. But this is, for example, what the design team, the camera team that we worked with came up at the end. So maybe just a little brief, if you want to add something.
I do. Maybe I'll just add one of the best things that I found kind of going into some of this work is that it busts a lot of your assumptions. And so we heard from users, especially blind and low vision users, that it was such a pain point to try to take pictures because they couldn't see what was on the screen. And it kind of busted an assumption I personally had, which was, why didn't low vision users want to take pictures? Especially they want to take selfies so that they can share them with their loved ones or friends or family. So that's also just a great benefit of doing accessibility and inclusion research, is that you'll kind of uncover like biased assumptions that you might have been holding as well. Yeah.
One face. Move your phone slightly left and down. Move your phone slightly right and up. Ready for selfie. 3, 2, 1. Photo taken. One face.
Oh my god, I love this.
Move your phone right and up. Ready for selfie.
Wait, I want to get
One
my
face.
light.
Photo taken.
This is so cool. My name is Molly Burke. I'm a social media content creator and motivational speaker who happens to be blind. So often, I find accessibility is focused on making sure disabled people can do the bare minimum to get by. It's important that accessibility not just focus on designing things to make disabled people function, but also empower them to have fun in life again.
I'm Lyndon Wang. I'm one of the original creators of the Guided Frame. Guided Frame is a smart selfie feature that helps blind and low vision users to take a beautiful selfie.
1. Photo taken.
Selfie to me and to many blind users, I think, is a way they express themselves.
For so long, I couldn't take selfies because I could never frame it correctly. I would try to like show a friend a new t-shirt that I got, and I'd be like, look at how cute this top is, and I'd text her a selfie and she'd be like, yeah, I can't see it at all.
In Google, we strive to make our technology and product accessible for everyone to use. So it's super important for us to develop a camera experience that's inclusive.
Photo taken.
We constantly checking in with our blind and low vision users because their feedback will help make our product much better.
We just wanted to show an example of something that our team worked with. Ling Yang was one of the actual product managers that we work with, who happens to be with a camera team. So as Jenna described before, this product was also born as a result of different phases, starting with more exploratory research, understanding the needs, the wants, the desires of low vision and blind people, and then coming up with concepts, and then further testing those concepts, understanding how it would be most helpful to give this feedback so that blind low vision people can take selfies, what kind of feedback they want to hear, what is possible to be engineered, and then moving on to like what is the best design, the UI that's user-friendly, but not just for blind and low vision people. This is what's interesting. Accessibility research is also applicable for situational impairments, what we call, for example, maybe this is not very applicable, but let's say Google Voice can be helpful for persons that are driving or that have hands occupied, or a mother that is holding a kid. So, a lot of these features can be useful by the general population as well, but the idea is to make the products as user-friendly as possible for everyone, including the marginalized groups of people. So yeah, this is the guided frame. Another example, for example, is a Lookout app, which is an app that helps detect text or photos or bills or objects around for blind and low vision people. That's also kind of like born due to the needs of this group of people. Accessibility reader, talkback, switch access, which is, for example, a feature that you can find on Pixel for individuals that have dexterity issues, or that cannot use their upper, like they cannot use their hands, and they can use a switch access feature to get across. Fingerprint authentication, I think it's
talk to this one. So this is another good example of sometimes how if we make products more accessible and inclusive for people with disabilities, it also helps everyone else as well. And so we were finding when we were developing the on-screen fingerprint sensor reader for Pixel, it was very hard to enroll if you actually couldn't see the screen. And so we developed different ways of helping people without being able to see the screen better enroll their fingerprint. And then this also just made for a better experience for everyone's experience, kind of getting your fingerprint enrolled, which then makes every time, we think we something like, how many times do you unlock your phone a day? It was, I forgot the exact number, like hundreds of times a day that you unlock your phone. And so for that experience to be a seamless, good experience every time, kind of a lot revolves around that initial enrollment period. And so it's another example of that. And that's it. All right, so thank you all so much. If anyone wants to connect, feel free. You can connect with me. I love kind of talking about this stuff. And then we can now open it up for some Q&A as well. Oh.
Thank you. So hello, my name's Donna. I am a UX design professor for the past 2 years for master's and bachelor levels. And my question is with regard to ethical design. I am currently in the process of registering my PhD for behavioral design, and a specifics is going to be on addictive design. So as you know, there is a lot of debate going on currently with, between designers of how much of the cool features are there for the optimization or the improvement of the user experience, and how much of it is actually a sort of manipulation, for the lack of a better word. And you may be familiar with Tristan Harris. He's a very famous figure in this field. He actually used to be a designer in Google, and he quit after a while when he figured out that the ethical aspect was not taken into consideration too much. This happened a few years back. I don't know how the situation is currently. And he used to be a big critic in this aspect. So we know that Amazon also uses dark patterns. Snapchat is very much famous for using the streak feature that, in a way, makes teenagers who used to be and are still their main target audience addicted to their product. My question is, what is Google's approach with this regard, and what is the future of ethical design?
That is a great question, and a really difficult one. So we'll start off with the hard questions. Great, love it. And as you were thinking of that, or as you were saying that, I went back to my example that I was just showing. Now, instead of one screen, you have 3 screens. And while this is very cool, and it's flashy, and it's new, it's innovative, you're also like, oh, that's 3 times more screens to have your eyes kind of stuck to. So I definitely hear that. And I think my most transparent and honest answer is that it is taken into account in separate ways. And so there are teams like my team that are building these cool new features, and then there are separate teams that work on initiatives like digital well-being, who are also building the apps to do screen time control, that do blue light filters, that do more of the sort of health features. And I will say, like, as I showed some of those stakeholder maps in the different bubbles, is that sometimes these do tend to be different teams, and we are aware of each other, but we do kind of work a little bit siloed, and that's that's just very honest. Is that the same person that's developing the really cool feature is not necessarily also figuring out how to control and regulate that feature. They tend to be different.
And then there's initiatives that are also like considering this issue, like calm computing. I kind of, it's a new thing I first heard when I started working there, whereas like, you know, designers are concerned with coming up with designs that are less disruptive, so that make sort of less disruptions to the attention span, and are just coexisting there with you in your space, and are there for when you need them, but are not intrusive and are not intruding on the daily functioning, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, a lot of, I mentioned we'd work on a lot of those home products, and a lot of consideration goes into the design, the color choices that we use, the materials that we use, and using these soft fabrics and these soft blended textures so that it doesn't necessarily look like you just have screens all over your house, that they're kind of there. You have the information if you want it without making it feel like you're kind of being surrounded by it. And I think people who, as we work, it was just kind of a Q&A screen. Maybe it'll come back. As I kind of showed on that another map about how sometimes there's like these ongoing initiatives in the background, such as sustainability. I do know digital well-being is one of them, so it is talked about. It is a concern, and then there are just like those competing business interests. That's 100% true. So I'm loving the fact that you're a professor working on that, because it definitely does continue to need to have work on that space as well.
Thank you for your answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Hi, my name is Art. I'm a front-end developer. And during your whole talk, I heard a lot about accessibility, and I was just wondering if you could give me a better explanation of what the term accessibility envelops.
Should I take a stab at it?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, just like accessibility.
Basically means accessible design, basically means design that has considered different people with different abilities. So a design that is not equal, I mean, the goal is to be equally well used by people that, for example, are blind, those that have dexterity issues, those that have hearing issues, those that have different cognitive impairments. So a design that can be used by different groups of people is an accessible design. And if you hear the term accessible features, then it means that it's a feature that will help people with different abilities to have access to that, either software or hardware, like depending on what the product is. So for example, TalkBack is one such feature where the phone will read and talk back to you the text that's in front for people that can't see the text. Or for example, Voice Assistant is another feature where you have your hands impaired, you can talk directly to the phone and give it commands.
So those are the accessibility features.
Yes.
Do you think there could be like any fallbacks if you try to make the product too accessible? Maybe would there be maybe any repercussions to that, as far as you make the phone more accessible for a person with a certain kind of disability? Would that affect how the product would be used by, let's say, I hate to use the term normal people without any of the special disabilities?
General population, yeah. Well, in general, you know, the accessibility features and accessible designs are meant to help, as we said, also situational impairment. So it usually works on this direction, but maybe Jenna, you have a different answer.
Yeah, I can't think of an example. So we put a lot of functionality onto the buttons of our phone. So if you double press power button, it'll open the camera. If you click top power and volume button, it'll take screenshots. Yeah. However, those only work if it's in sort of general user mode. And so if you then put the phone in accessibility mode, double clicking on camera will open TalkBack, and different combinations of buttons will perform different functions in accessibility mode than they do in sort of like general user mode. And so I guess it's like thought about that, okay, like certain features will not work in accessibility mode if we've mapped them to physical buttons, or as we plan to map things to buttons, how is that going to work if we're using those buttons in different modes for different users? And so right now they're kind of like in different modes. We have accessibility mode that operates one way, and we have general mode that operates in another way. So we've sort of accounted for things like that. I think that's an example I can think of.
Yeah, so there's definitely special consideration paid when we are researching these products, like what would be least disruptive, mapping like different buttons to different functions in accessibility mode versus general use mode. And the special consideration is paid to create experiences that are not disruptive to the general population users.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, Lisa.
Okay, thank you for the great talk, Visar Barisha, Arizona State University. I have a question about, like, what does it take to cross the threshold to introduce a feature that requires behavioral change from a user? Like, the motion sense thing is really interesting. And who provided the prompt for those initial studies? Like, I want a feature that I can do something with the phone without having to touch it.
Something I kind of left out of that product development cycle is we have these entire sort of market research teams that do a lot of marketing viability to work to determine, will this help us increase sales? Is this a good marketing moment that we can show in our commercials? Is this something that our competitors haven't thought of yet that might give us a competitive advantage? And so they'll kind of do those landscape pieces of the puzzle. So not only is it, can we build it, can we design it, will the user use it, but also like, if we put it into the product and we prioritize that feature over, say, the 10 other like cool ideas we're working on at the time, will it kind of help our sales? Will it help our brand? Will it help our perception that we're an innovative company? And so that will also definitely go into the piece of the puzzle as well. And market research is a little bit different than UX research, but we do work a lot with them because they do kind of a lot of talking to users and talking to end users, talking to customers, talking to trend forecasters and things like that. And what was the other part of the question?
I think that was most of it. Is it true it's going to make a comeback in one of the newer Pixel phones, or are you not allowed to say?
I will say, like, yeah, it's a very small amount of real estate for like all the cool things that you want to be able to do. And so there is definitely competition for which features get prioritized, if they're going to utilize the camera, if they're going to utilize buttons, if they're going to utilize some physical sensor real estate on the phone. So maybe, or maybe something even better will come. We'll see.
Great, thank you.
Hey, I'm Kushtram. I'm a product manager. I was really wondering about that trade-off. How does it really work in practice at Google, seeing as there's a small amount of real estate, and how does that decision-making really look like in practice? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I wonder if I go back to this web. And so in a great world, all of these different bubbles have the same interests and want to do the same thing and all want to work together on the same stuff. In reality, people do have competing interests, and sometimes what we think is cool for users will then show that there are other business priorities that kind of trump it sometimes. Sometimes we'll see that something might be good for a marketing moment, like any sort of camera feature tends to get priority because it is the main factor that drives the sales of our phone. And so a lot of camera features will get prioritized over like other things that we think are cool. So that definitely happens. And then product managers, I think, do have a really hard job of trying to balance a lot of these different pieces and making sure that everyone is kind of being heard and represented. And then if we decide of a trade-off that we're going to go with one direction over the other, that then we kind of are working out and people understand that we had to use either a business justification, a marketing justification, an engineering challenge that just, it took too much battery life. If you take too much battery life, then the end user is going to be unhappy, so we can't use your feature because it just didn't work. So those things do happen all the time, and I have noticed, like, as part of this job, you have to like be a little tiny bit detached from it and realize, like, all right, if it wasn't this, maybe the next thing will kind of be more something that I was excited about. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, thanks for the presentation. I'm Umar, a product designer, and my question is related to accessibility inclusion topic. So when you are discussing, evaluating, let's say, the sets of behavior that you intend to support on a given product or feature, how do you decide when to stop? As in, we are going to support these sets of behaviors, the special need behaviors as well, at this stage of the product, and the rest goes for the next iteration, or how does this work? Thank you.
Just to clarify, was the question, how do we decide if we stop supporting features? Like, what is that decision to end support for something? Is that the...
I think, how do you prioritize? Is that maybe another way to put it? How do you prioritize which accessibility features to prioritize versus like others?
Again, is another great question. Let's see. Going through this stage, I guess I'll say, like, because we make new phones every year, a lot of the prioritization is around like what is passing all of these different stages at different times. And so we have a ton of accessibility inclusion features that are in development. Some will not launch for many years because they take so long to implement. So part of it is just timing. With a lot of it, it takes to build new innovations. Again, a lot of it will kind of go back to like the product or business justification for what is going to be most useful to us, what is actually going to help us sell products. And when we're going through these foundational new idea stages and kind of surfacing existing pain points or newly desired features that don't currently exist. We'll definitely hear the ones that are of biggest pain point right now. What is preventing me from using this phone? What is really missing? What is a constant struggle that needs to be prioritized to be fixed? And then other things like Eldita was mentioning, we love making technology that helps make people's lives simpler. And so the feature of the other one,
switch access.
So for instance, we heard from people, especially our blind users, if I could take pictures of things and my phone will tell me what I just took a picture of, such as in US money, so all US dollars are the same size, whether it's a $1 bill or a $100 bill, it is the same size bill. And so if I'm holding a stack of money, I can't tell what I'm holding. If I could take a picture, you could tell me what it is, my day-to-day life would be 1,000 times simpler. And we hear that, and we're like, oh, that would be not that hard for us to implement, and it would make a humongous difference in so many people's lives. Things like that will tend to get priority.
Yeah, so both hearing from these exploratory foundational research and also matching that with existing, for example, technology that can support building such feature, like let's say with AI and ML becoming more of a thing and being able to pair that with different features of camera, we know that it's easier to design, let's say the feature that Jenna was just talking about, the detection of bills, and then that can be prioritized over something that it will take a little bit more time or that the business justification has pushed aside a little bit. So.
Yeah, anytime we can leverage something that already exists, that's easier than if we have to build a whole new sensor that doesn't exist yet.
Prishtina?
Hi, I'm Nora. I'm Eldita's friend. A couple of days ago, we hung out together with Eldita, and she shared with me her amazing experience in Google. I would like for you to talk a bit more about work culture in Google. Maybe this might be a teaching moment for everyone here. How the real life works, actually.
Thanks for this question, Nora. Nora is a dear friend, so I'm happy to answer your question. I would have done in private as well, but let's just. Yeah, for me, it was, definitely a major milestone to work at Google, because as Jenna talked about this earlier, first we were very big psychology enthusiasts. We didn't even know about the UX research field. And then once we've discovered it and we knew the potential of like changing, having some impact, using like our analytical and psychology skills, it was just amazing to understand that that's possible. So coming from that point, from that desire, that goal, into actually doing it, for me was quite a milestone. So that was challenge number one. And after I conquered that challenge by becoming a contractor, working for the inclusive design, program at Google, there was the other challenge, fitting in. And Jenna is laughing because that wasn't very hard to do, because everyone is very welcoming, ready to mentor, ready to teach, ready to be there to guide through steps. But it was also a certain unspoken expectation that you have to perform well, and you have to like match the level of intellectualism and also experience of all these other Googlers around. So first I was nervous whether I'd be able to pull that off, but with a lot of support from colleagues, from Jenna and other people around me, I very quickly felt that, I can actually sit down, talk about these problems, talk about possible solutions with people in technical terms. Once I conquered some technical terms, like Jenna was being very careful not to mention a lot of them during her presentation because they're kind of like internal terms, but they are used a lot by Googlers. I felt like, yeah, I'm one of you now. So, yeah, and the other thing is that although work is very relaxing in a sense of there's no like strict time management, there's no come at 9, leave at 5, we're watching you, badge in, badge out, there's still some kind of internal inclination to work and perform because you do want to do a great job. You do want your product to succeed because that means that you've succeeded, and then it means that you're necessary, and so on, so on. So that was kind of like some lessons learned for me that I went through during my time at Google. Yes.
Pizzas are here, so we don't want to eat.
Pizzas are here. Thank you, Nora.
Fajmderit krejtve, thank you Jane and Eldita. Let's spend the next 30 minutes having some pizza, some drinks, listen to music, and also please feel free to chat with Jenna and the rest of the team about any certain question. Fajmderit shumë që keni qenë pjesë e startup grindit, vazhdojmë kohën e parë.